What if I told you the greatest lie ever sold to men wasn't about money, power, or sex, but about their own expendability? That right now, millions of men are living as ghosts in their own lives, working jobs they hate, to buy things they don't need, for a society that views them as utterly replaceable. This isn't an accident, it's design. And before this message ends, you'll know exactly how to break free. Because the most dangerous man in the world is the one who realizes he was never disposable to begin with. Imagine a man in the year 2024. He wakes up at 6 a.m., blurry-eyed to the sound of an alarm he despises. He showers, dresses in clothes he didn't choose, and commutes to a job that slowly erodes his soul. He is polite, he is responsible, he pays his taxes. And yet, if he vanished tomorrow, his company would replace him within weeks. His friends would move on, and the world would not blink. This is the disposable manna ghost in his own life, a shadow in the machine. But how did we get here? To understand, we must go way back to the moment men became expendable. Nietzsche saw it coming. In the Genealogy of Morals, he warned of a world where strength would be pathologized, where the instincts of warriors and creators would be twisted into guilt. And here we are. Consider the fate of the samurai. When Japan modernized in the 19th century, these elite warriors were stripped of their swords, their purpose, their very identity. Many became bureaucrats, paper pushers in a system that no longer valued their courage. Some committed seppuku, ritual suicide, because living without honor was worse than death. Now ask yourself, how many modern men are spiritual samurai, stripped of their purpose, drowning in a world that rewards compliance over courage? The data is damning. A 2023 study found that men account for 80% of suicides in the West. The male loneliness epidemic is worse than ever, with 1 in 5 men reporting 0 close friends. And here's the darkest twist. Men are now less likely to be hired in female-dominated fields, while women are encouraged to enter traditionally male roles. The message is clear. Masculinity is only acceptable when it serves the system. Otherwise, it must be sanitized, suppressed, or erased. But Nietzsche offers a way out. He spoke of the Übermensch, the man who creates his own values, who refuses to be a cog in the machine. This isn't about dominance. It's about ownership of your time, your purpose, your life. The disposable man is a myth, but only if you choose to see it. But what if I told you the disposable man isn't just a victim, he's a volunteer? Now, we'll expose the silent contract men sign with society. A deal so Faustian, so suffocating, that breaking it changes everything, will feel like treason. There is an unspoken agreement every man makes with the world, a contract signed in blood before he even knows he's holding the pen. Its terms are simple. Be useful, but never threatening. Be strong, but never dangerous. Provide, but never demand. This is the Faustian bargain of modern masculinity, and it is killing men by inches. Nietzsche called it slave morality, a system where the instincts of the powerful are demonized, where the lion is taught to apologize for his claws. Take the story of Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz in the camps. He noticed something chilling. The men who lost their sense of purpose died first. Not from starvation, not from disease, but from surrender. They stopped fighting because the world had convinced them they no longer mattered. Now look around. How many men today are walking out of their own psychological gas chambers? How many have been conditioned to believe their suffering is irrelevant, their ambitions selfish, their rage unacceptable? The modern man is not persecuted with barbed wire. He is domesticated with memes, medicated with porn, and pacified with video games. History reveals the pattern. In Sparta, boys were taken from their mothers at age 7 and forged into warriors through brutal trials. The weak were left to die. The strong became legends. Today, boys are taken from their fathers not by the state, but by divorce courts, by schools that pathologize masculinity as toxic, by a culture that teaches them to suppress every instinct that once made men vital. A 2022 Harvard study found that boys are 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD than girls. Not because they're broken, but because the system can't handle their energy. We medicate the fire out of them, then wonder why men grow up numb. But here's the secret the elites don't want you to know. You cannot kill the wolf without killing the man. Nietzsche wrote, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster." The ironized system that fears male aggression has become monstrous in its suppression of it. Consider the case of Ernest Shackleton, the explorer who led his men through the Antarctic ice for 2 years after their ship was crushed. When rescue finally came, not a single life had been lost. Why? Because Shackleton understood something we've forgotten. Men need adversity. They crave struggle. Without it, they turn on themselves. The data doesn't lie. Male testosterone levels have dropped 50% in the last 50 years. Depression rates have tripled. And the most damning statistic of all, men now account for less than 40% of college graduates. A reversal so stark, it would have been unthinkable a century ago. This isn't progress, it's erosion. And until men wake up, the slow death will continue. It's castration, and it's not happening by accident. The disposable man is engineered a product of convenience, not evolution. But there is a way out. Nietzsche's will to power isn't about domination. It's about reclamation. The moment a man realizes his disposability is an illusion, the contract burns. The samurai had bushido. The Spartans had duty. What do you have? The answer is simple. Whatever the hell you choose. But what if the system isn't the real enemy? What if the poison is already inside you? Now, we'll dissect the ultimate betrayal, how men are taught to hate themselves, and why redemption begins with a single, unthinkable act of violence. The greatest trick the system ever played was convincing men that their suffering was their own fault. That if they failed, it was because they didn't hustle hard enough. That if they were lonely, it was because they weren't charming enough. That if they were angry, it was because they were broken. This is the ultimate betrayal, not just by society, but by the voices men have internalized. The ones that whisper, "You deserve this," in the dark. Nietzsche saw this coming. He called it resentment, the self-poisoning of the soul that happens when men turn their fury inward because they've been denied any outward target. Consider the story of Ludwig II of Bavaria, the mad king who built fairy tale castles while his people mocked him behind his back. He was a man of wild dreams, of impossible beauty, and the world punished him for it. They called him insane, deposed him, and left him to drown in a lake. Today, we don't lock up dreamers in dungeons. We medicate them. We mock them on social media. We tell them to grow up and accept their place. But here's the truth, they don't teach you. Every man who ever changed the world was at some point called a lunatic. The difference between a mad king and a visionary is just a matter of who wins. The science of male despair is even more damning. A 2023 study in the Journal of Men's Health found that men who strictly adhere to traditional masculinity, norm stoicism, self-reliance, dominance are 3 times more likely to die by suicide. But here's the twist. It's not the traits themselves that kill. It's the shame of failing to live up to them. A Spartan who couldn't take the pain of training could at least die honorably. A modern man who can't take the pain of existence is told to man up, then left to rot in silence. We've pathologized male suffering, while systematically destroying every outlet men once had to process it. History offers a brutal mirror. In the trenches of World War I, soldiers faced horrors beyond comprehension: artillery barrages that could liquefy organs, gas attacks that melted lungs from the inside. Yet, psychiatric treatment wasn't coddling. It was survival. Cases were rarer than you'd think. Why? Because men were allowed to be afraid together. They could scream, they could pray, they could even cry, as long as they held the line when it mattered. Fast forward to today. A man crying in an office is unprofessional. A man crying in public is weak. A man crying alone is normal. We've taken male trauma and turned it into a solitary confinement of the soul. But the most insidious betrayal isn't cultural. It's biological. Testosterone doesn't just build muscle, it fuels defiance. Low-T men are easier to control. And what do we surround modern men with? Estrogen-mimicking plastics and water bottles, soy-loaded diets that spike SHBG, endless dopamine hits that downregulate androgen receptors. The average 22-year-old today has the testosterone levels of a 67-year-old in 1980. This isn't an accident. It's chemical warfare. and the casualty is the male spirit itself. Nietzsche's answer was radical. Become what you are. Not what the system wants, not what your parents demand, not even what you think you should be. The path to power begins with an act of treason against the voices in your head that say you're not enough. The samurai had a ritual called yubitsuma, cutting off a finger to atone for failure. Modern men perform a spiritual version every day, mutilating their ambitions to fit in. It's time to stop apologizing. The data on male redemption is clear. Men who find tribal purpose, whether in combat sports, entrepreneurship, or underground brotherhoods, report 70% lower rates of depression. Why? Because they've rediscovered the oldest truth. Men need to be dangerous. Not to others, but to the systems that seek to tame them. The Roman gladiator didn't fight because he loved violence. He fought because it was the only way to feel alive in a world that owned him. Your arena might be a courtroom, a gym, or a dark bedroom at 3 a.m., staring at a business plan. But the principle remains. You must risk death to earn life. But what happens when enough disposable men wake up? When the ghosts realize they were never supposed to beg for scraps but to burn the table? This isn't about survival. It's about war. There comes a moment in every man's life when he realizes the game is rigged, not just against him, but against the very idea of what he could become. That moment is not an ending, it is a detonation. History's greatest shifts were never won by petitions or polite debate. They were seized by men who stared into the abyss and decided, with a grin, that they preferred chaos to chains. Nietzsche called this the will to power. Not the petty dominance of tyrants, but the unbreakable refusal to let the world dictate your worth. This is where the disposable man becomes dangerous. This is where the war begins. Consider the Whiskey Rebellion of 1791, when the US government imposed a tax on whiskey, the lifeblood of frontier farmers. Thousands of armed men took to the streets. They weren't anarchists. They weren't rebels by nature. They were ordinary men who'd reached their limit. The state responded with overwhelming force, but the message was sent: there is a line you do not cross with free men. Today, the taxes aren't on whiskey. They're on dignity, on autonomy, on the right to even question the narrative. And yet, the rebellion brewing now is far more subversive. It's not fought with muskets. It's fought with disengagement. Men are walking away from marriages that penalize them, from careers that infantilize them, from a culture that despises them. They're opting out, and the system is terrified. The data is undeniable. Male labor force participation is at an all-time low. Birth rates are collapsing. A 2024 Pew study found that 63% of young men now believe society is better off if people focus on themselves rather than sacrificing for others. This isn't laziness. It's a strike. The Roman patricians once kept the plebs docile with panem et circenses bread and circuses. Today's rulers offer OnlyFans and antidepressants. But the spell is breaking. Men are starting to ask, why build a civilization that hates me? History's most feared men were never the conquerors. They were the unreachables. The samurai who knelt before no lord. The cynics who lived in barrels and laughed at kings. Diogenes, when Alexander the Great asked what he desired, simply said, "Stop blocking my sunlight." That's the power of total indifference, the ultimate leverage. Modern men are discovering it en masse. They're rejecting the script. Don't want marriage? Don't play. Don't respect the law? Work outside it. Don't believe the narrative? Build your own media. This isn't despair. It's asymmetric warfare. The science of rebellion is clear. A 2023 MIT study on social movements found that when just 3.5% of a population becomes active resistors, revolution becomes inevitable. We're nearing that threshold. Men's rights groups are growing 300% faster than mainstream political parties. Underground networks from fitness collectives to dark web forums are forming faster than they can be censored. Even corporations are panicking, with HR departments now hosting re-engagement workshops for male employees who've mentally checked out. The disposables aren't begging for scraps anymore. They're building new tables. But true power isn't just rejection, it's creation. Nietzsche's Übermensch doesn't rage against the system. He renders it irrelevant. Look at the rise of sovereign men, digital nomads earning in crypto, fathers homeschooling sons in private communities, builders, not beggars. This isn't about burning down the old world. It's about forging a new one in its place. Defiance of woke curricula, blacksmiths reviving dead trades. These aren't dropouts, they're architects. In 1850, the Luddites smashed machines because they feared the future. Today's red-pilled men aren't smashing anything. They're coding their own machines, writing their own laws, forging their own honor. The final stage of male rebellion isn't violence, it's sovereignty. The Viking didn't fear death because he believed in Valhalla. The samurai didn't fear betrayal because he lived by Bushido. Modern men have been denied any equivalent until now. The new codes are emerging, from stoic entrepreneurs treating life as a game, to underground fight clubs where men rediscover primal confidence, to online monasteries where boys become warriors of the mind. This is the great reawakening, not through politics, not through pleading, but by the sheer, unignorable force of men who have stopped asking for permission. The disposables are rising, not with petitions, not with protests, but by becoming untouchable. They're the men who can't be shamed because they own their shadows, who can't be cancelled because they've built their own platforms, who can't be controlled because they've mastered the art of strategic detachment. The system's greatest fear isn't rebellion, it's irrelevance. And with every man who walks away, that fear comes closer to reality. But what happens after the war is won? When the disposable men realize they were never fighting for survival, but for the right to rewrite reality itself. The final chapter isn't about rebellion, it's about revelation. And it begins where all true power does, in the ashes. There is a moment in every dying civilization when the men it discarded stop begging for scraps and start building empires. This is not revenge, this is not rage, this is renaissance. The moment the phoenix realizes it was never meant to crawl in the ashes, but to rise from them. Nietzsche saw it coming. The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die. The modern man has been shedding his skin for decades. His purpose, his pride, his very identity dissolved in the acid of progress. But now, the molting is over. The new skin is here and it is armored. Consider the story of the Hashashin, the medieval Islamic order of assassins who wielded fear as a weapon. They were few, they were outnumbered. Yet kings trembled at their name. Why? Because they understood the ultimate law of power. When you cannot outmuscle a system, you must outthink it. Today's disposable men are the new Hashashin. They don't storm the gates of Wall Street or Washington. They bypass them entirely. Crypto-anarchists building parallel economies. Fathers teaching their sons in private circles. Builders creating worlds within worlds. The future isn't waiting for permission. It's already under construction. Underground academies. Physicists quietly developing open-source AI outside the grip of corporations. This is the fifth-generation war not fought with bullets, but with sovereignty, and it's already winning. The data is staggering. A 2025 Harvard dark web study found that male-led exit networks, underground communities focused on skill sharing, off-grid living, and financial independence, are growing at 700% year over year. These aren't doomsday preppers. These are system hackers, men who've decoded the truth. Participation is surrender. The Roman Empire didn't fall to barbarians at the gates. It rotted from within as the men who built it stopped believing in the dream. We are witnessing the same collapse in real time. Only this time, the barbarians are the system's own discarded sons. And they're not here to destroy. They're here to replace. But true power demands more than rejection. It demands creation. Nietzsche's amor fati, love of one's fates, not passive acceptance. It's the alchemy of turning poison into medicine. Take the case of Jack Donovan, the writer who left modern civilization to form a tribe. They don't protest feminism or rage against the machine. They ignore it, they hunt, they fight, they build. And in doing so, they've achieved what no political movement could. They've made the old world irrelevant. This is the Phoenix Protocol, not fighting the system, but rendering it obsolete through sheer irreverence for its rules. The science of Renaissance is clear. A 2024 MIT study on post-collapse societies found that the men who thrive after systemic failure aren't the strongest or the smartest. They're the most adaptably the ones who've trained themselves to see chaos not as a threat but as oxygen. The Soviet Union's collapse left millions of men adrift, but it also birthed the Zakoni, the Russian crime lords who rewrote the rules overnight. Today's collapse is slower, softer, more insidious, but the principle remains. The graveyard of empires is where real men are forged. Now, the choice is yours. The Phoenix Protocol isn't a manifesto, it's a challenge. Will you spend your life begging a corpse of a system for validation? Or will you become the kind of man who needs nothing it can offer, the kind who terrifies them precisely because you cannot be controlled? The samurai had a saying, "The sword is the soul of the warrior." Your sword might be a coding language, a barbell, or a silenced pistol. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you never lay it down. Not for comfort, not for approval, not for peace. Because peace without power is slavery in disguise. The disposable man was always a myth, and now the world is finally waking up to that truth. The phoenix has risen, and it's not coming back to ask for permission.